There's some alarming trends happening right now in the Florida housing market regarding single-family houses. So for example, this February, there's more new listings since any February since at least 2008. So in other words, a 16-year high in the amount of new listings this February during the same time frame. This has caused a huge increase of inventory levels, rising by more than 30% on a year-over-year basis. To make matters worse, the share of price reductions in Florida is at least a 5-year high for this time of year. A lot of interesting dynamics happening right now in the Florida housing market regarding single-family houses. By the way, this is part 2 of my 2-part video series I made this month, because in my previous video, I talked about the condo market in Florida and also some challenges there as well. But today's video is about single-family houses. So I'm going to share today regarding home prices, housing inventory, closed home sales, the share of price reductions, and much, much more in the state of Florida. So if you guys get any value out of this video whatsoever, then please hit the like button, because this video took me hours to make, because this report is from the Florida Realtors Association, but their report this month only goes back to 2020. So I did some digging for you guys to see how the numbers we're seeing today compared to 2016 through 2019. Let's first share a video from Ben O'Connor. He's the chief economist at the Florida Realtors. Here's what he had to say.
On the supply side, we are seeing significantly more new listings than a year ago. As I highlighted in last month's video, the monthly number of new listings in Florida dropped below normal levels beginning in fall of 2022.
So he's talking about right here is that because interest rates increased so much in 2022, more than doubling in less than 1 year, that's one of the main reasons why the amount of new listings decreased big time in 2022. Because in June, we had about a 5-year high for that same time frame. But by the time we hit September, we're at a 5-year low, the lowest level since at least 2019. Let's continue.
When the mortgage rate lock-in effect really started to take hold.
There you go.
And they remained there for about a full year. But in the latter part of the third quarter of 2023, they returned to normal levels for the remainder of the year. So far this year, while you could still characterize new listings of single-family homes as being in their normal pre-pandemic range, they were at the high end of that range in February.
Additionally, even though they're higher compared to the previous several years, going back to 2019, look at this though. So January to February, a sharp increase, whereas every single year before that, except for 1 year right here where they barely increased, every single year, new listings decreased in February, whereas this February, they rose big time, the highest level since 2008, which he says right here.
In fact, there were more single-family homes listed for sale in Florida this February than in any February dating back to 2008, when we started tracking new listings.
So they started tracking data back in 2008. So the amount of new listings this February, the highest levels since approximately 16 years ago at least. Pretty crazy. So let's look at their actual report regarding single-family stats for the state of Florida. Let's look at new listings, then active listings or inventory levels, and of course, home prices and much, much more. So new listings this February, the most recent stats we have from them, they'll have March's numbers in about 2 weeks or so. So this February, a giant increase of 28.3% year over year in the amount of newly listed properties. And like he mentioned, the highest level since 2008. Now, this is quite the turnaround compared to February 2003 or 2023, I should say, because back then, that was the lowest number of new listings of a February since 2013. What a turnaround over the past 1 year. So because we're seeing this rise of the amount of people listing their houses for sale, of course, active listings or housing supply in Florida also has been rising big time as well, increasing by 36.5% on top of last year's gains, up by 131%. So last year, compared to February 2022, increasing by 131%. And on top of that, this year up by 36.5%. This marks at 85,000 houses for sale approximately. This is the highest amount of homes for sale in any month since 2019. That should put downward pressure on prices, especially given the fact that rates haven't decreased so much this year. Rates have been hovering around 7% for an average 30-year fix for people with great credit for quite some time. Like I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, I did some digging for you guys because I found the normal level of active listings or housing supply is in the range of 80 to 100,000 when looking at pre-COVID levels. So at 85,000, this is more or less in line with pre-pandemic levels, but it's not showing any signs of decreasing. And in fact, it's still increasing this February. So of course, the big question is, will inventory keep rising? And I'll definitely keep you posted with latest developments. Also, just for fun, look at 2022. Back in February 2022, there was approximately 25,000 homes for sale. Now there's 85,000, a giant increase compared to the lows we saw in 2022. All right, let's change gears slightly here and talk about the share of cash sales statewide in Florida. So this February, that share was at 31.6%. So nearly a third of all closed home sales were from a cash buyer who did not use a loan to buy a house. And of course, it looked at levels back in 2016 through 2019 at 31.6%. This is still historically high. So for example, back in 2019, the share was hovering around 25% and not at 32%. All right, let's talk about the median sold price in Florida. That's at $415,000, up by 5.1% year over year, better than last year's gain at 3.5%. What caught my attention though is that prices ever since really April last year have been relatively flat, going from around the range is around 409,000 to about 420,000 ever since April this year. So not a lot of movement regarding home prices over the past several months now. A couple more things I want to add is that this increase by 5.1% year over year is partially due to the fact that we're seeing more expensive houses sold this February compared to February 2023. So the mix in sales is affecting the median sold price in Florida, which I'll share with you guys here in a little bit. The Florida Realtors Association also provided this as well. This is the sale price to original list price ratio. This February, it was at 96.2%. This means out of all the houses that sold this February, they sold for 3.8 percentage points less than the seller's original list price. So more often than not, houses selling less than the seller's original asking price. Also, days in the market is at 47 days, only an increase of 9.3% from 1 year ago. But that's on top of the giant increase of 258% that we saw in February 2023 compared to 2022. Something that really caught my attention as well. This, by the way, is a time frame when you list your home for sale until you accept an offer from a home buyer. That's at 47 days on average this February, I should say the median time. But look at March, April, and May of 2022. Days in the market was around 10 days. Now it's at 47 days. Very big changes compared to the craziness we saw in the spring months of 2022. On top of that, at 47 days, this is the slowest rate since at least February of 2020. All right, let's have a look at the amount of new pending home sales. It says here the number of listed properties for sale that went under contract with a home buyer during the month. This February, it was flat on a year-over-year basis, down by 0.3%. Also, we did see a big increase in January and February this year, but this is seasonal or normal. So you can see that by looking at this graph right here. Big increase this January and February, but we saw exactly the same thing in January and February last year, in 2022, as well as 2021. Let's also discuss the month supply. So the month supply this February is at 3.9 months. That's an increase of 44.4% year over year, on top of the 200% increase we saw in February 2023. And by the way, more normal levels back in 2016 through 2018 is around a 4-month supply. So at 3.9 months this February, more or less in line with historical pre-pandemic averages. But just like days in the market, pretty wild to see the differences between the early parts of 2022, because back then the month supply was around 1 month. Now it's at 3.9 months. Very big changes, especially compared to the craziness that we've had over the past several years. Now here's a metric I really like, because this to me tells me this is one of the reasons why the median sold price in Florida is so inflated right now, up by about 5% year over year, is due to a huge increase of houses that sold this February for over $600,000. So for example, houses that sold in the range of $600,000 to just under $1 million increased by 16.6% from 12 months ago. Houses that sold for over $1 million increased by nearly 20%. So again, because we're seeing this huge increase of more expensive houses that are selling, this is one reason why home prices are up on a year-over-year basis. I looked at this chart from February of 2020 just to see, are these percentages changing? And also, is the amount of houses that have closed vary for these price segments? And the answer is 100% yes. And I have this to share with you guys. So in looking at the amount of closed home sales this February for over 600,000, that's 3,085 plus 1,647. That is 4,732 houses that sold for over 600,000 this February. Compare that to February of 2020, there was only 1,815. In other words, there's 160% more closed home sales in Florida that sold for over $600,000. In my opinion, this is a byproduct of skyrocketing home prices ever since 2020. So check this out. Back in February 2020, in the range of $600 to nearly $1 million, only 1,166 closed home sales. Again, February of 2020 compared to 3,085 this February. Also, 1,647 closed home sales for over $1 million. Back in February 2020, only 649. All right, two more things I want to share with you guys. And here is foreclosures and short sales. And then I also want to give you guys an update regarding the share of price reductions in Florida. So in February 2024, there was 18,861 traditional closed home sales. This means not a distressed home sale. In other words, not a foreclosure and not a short sale. Compare that to foreclosures and REOs, or real estate owned properties. That was only 167 and also only 12 short sales. Absolutely crazy to see there was nearly 19,000 regular closed home sales and less than 200 foreclosures and only 12 short sales. So in other words, the amount of distressed home sales in Florida still remaining at extremely low levels. Don't get clickbaited though, because look at this, a giant increase of 55% on a year-over-year basis in foreclosures. The housing market's going to crash, right? I mean, come on. We're talking about low numbers here. 1 year ago, 108. Now it's only 167. In regards to the share of price reductions, here is altosresearch.com. And this really caught my attention here because the share price drops for the week ended April 5th is at 44%. This is higher compared to last year at 38%, but also very close to the peak The peak was set around November 25th at around 46%. Now we're at just below that at 44%. This is at least a 5-year high as well, because this is much higher compared to at this time in 2022, when the share price drops, it was only 19%. Also much higher compared to 21, 20, as well as 2019, when at that time the share price drops was at 39%. So one reason why we're seeing this increase in the amount of new listings, in my personal opinion, is due to this right here. Home insurance rates, not nationwide really, but especially in Florida. So this is based on a report from policygenius.com. And of course, just like all my videos, I'll provide a link in the video description below. So it says here, based on our analysis of over 27,000 home insurance policy renewals between May 21 and May 2023, it says insurance premiums increased on average of 68% in Florida, leading the nation. Policies increasing by 68%. In contrast, Vermont only increased by 10%, New York rose by 11%, and in Maine, that increased by 13%. Additionally, based on this report from Policy Genius as well, which covers May 2022 through May 2023, here is the top 5 states in which home insurance costs have increased the most, and leading the nation is Florida, up by 35% compared to May of 2022. The average premium increase is $489 per year, increasing from $1,400 to nearly $1,900 per year. This especially affects those who are on fixed incomes, who are seeing inflation rise. They're seeing their HOAs rise as well, if they do have an HOA. But on top of that, they're seeing insurance premiums increasing by 68% over the past 2 years. Absolutely insane. But if you guys live in Florida, I would love to hear from you guys. Please leave me a comment below with your thoughts regarding this report and also what you're seeing in your neck of the woods. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Like and subscribe. I appreciate you, and we'll see you in the next video.